I'm 84 years old. I was married to Harold Whitfield for 60 years. Everyone who knew us called it a good marriage, solid, steady, the kind that lasts. And it was. For 60 years, I believed that completely. Hal died 2 years ago. I held his hand, I buried him, I grieved him every morning over coffee cups. I still set out for 2. Then a letter arrived from a man I'd never heard of. A 50-year-old man, Hal's son. I'd been grieving a husband I never knew. My name is Lorraine Whitfield. I'm 84 years old. And 2 years ago, I buried my husband of 60 years. Harold, Hal, everyone called him. We were married in 1962. 3 children. A house in Cincinnati we paid off in 1994. Church every Sunday. Dinner at 6. The kind of marriage people used to call solid. The kind nobody talks about, because there's nothing dramatic to say. Hal died of heart failure. He was 82. I was holding his hand when he went, and I thought I knew what grief was. I thought I understood the shape of it. Missing him at breakfast, reaching for his side of the bed, still buying his brand of coffee, even though no one else drinks it. Grief is a strange muscle. You learn to live with the ache. But then a letter came, and I realized I hadn't been grieving my husband at all. I'd been grieving a man who never fully existed. I buried Hal, and then I met a man who'd been mourning a different father, his whole life. I want to tell you about the marriage I thought I had. Because for 60 years, I believed in it completely. Hal worked. That was the shape of him. He was a regional sales manager for a manufacturing company. He traveled 3-4 days a week sometimes. Gone Monday, back Thursday, or gone Tuesday, back Saturday. It changed depending on the territory, the clients, the season. I raised the children. Dennis, then Carol, then Michael, who passed in 2008, but that's a different grief, and I won't go there today. I ran the house. I handled the school conferences, and the doctor appointments, and the church potlucks. Hal handled the money, and the car maintenance, and the taxes. That was the deal. That was how marriages worked back then. You didn't question it, you just did your part. I remember this one morning. It was 1975. Dennis was 12, Carol was 8, Hal was leaving for a week-long trip, Kentucky, I think, or Tennessee. He came into the kitchen with his suitcase, kissed me on the forehead and said, "Hold down the fort." That was it, hold down the fort. I didn't think anything of it. I had 3 children and a house to run. I didn't have time to think about anything except the next meal, the next load of laundry, the next permission slip. When Hal came home, he'd ask about the kids. I'd ask about the trip, and we'd settle back into our rhythm. I can still hear the sound of his car in the driveway. That engine, I'd know it anywhere, and the smell of his coffee. He liked it strong, almost burnt. The way he'd sit at the breakfast table with his newspaper, not saying much, just present. That was Hal. Quiet, steady, present. At least I thought he was present. I thought all those trips were just work. I didn't know that during that year, 1975, somewhere else, a woman was having his child. The letter arrived in March of 2024, 2 years after Hal died. It was handwritten. That's the first thing I noticed. Who writes letters by hand anymore? But this one was. Blue ink on plain paper. The return address was from a town in Kentucky I'd never heard of. His name was Marcus Webb. He was 50 years old. His mother had passed the year before, and he'd done one of those DNA tests, the kind you see advertised on television. Looking for family history, he said. Looking for answers. The test led him to our son Dennis, which led him to Hal, which led him to me. He wasn't demanding anything. I want to be clear about that. He didn't ask for money, or inheritance, or acknowledgement. He just wanted to know. Had Hal ever mentioned him? Had Hal ever thought about him? Had Hal ever wondered what became of the son he left behind? I read that letter 6 times. Then I sat at my kitchen table, the same table where Hal had kissed my forehead all those mornings, and I didn't move for 4 hours. How do you grieve someone you don't recognize anymore? How do you mourn a marriage you're not sure was real? I kept coming back to something Hal said in the hospital. 3 days before he died. He squeezed my hand. His grip was so weak by then, and he looked at me and said, "You gave me a good life, Lorraine, better than I deserved." I thought it was humility. The kind of thing a dying man says when he's feeling grateful. I cried. I told him he deserved every bit of it. Now I wonder if it was confession, if he was trying to tell me something he couldn't say directly, if better than I deserved meant something I wasn't meant to understand until later. I'll never know. That's the hardest part. He's gone, and I can't ask him. I decided to meet Marcus. Dennis was furious. "Mum, you don't owe that man anything," he said. "He's not family." But Carol said, "You'll always wonder if you don't." Carol was right. I would wonder. So I met him. A coffee shop, neutral ground. And when Marcus walked in, my breath caught in my throat. He had Hal's jaw, Hal's hands, the same way of standing, slightly hunched, like he was trying to take up less space. There was no denying it. This was Hal's son. He sat down across from me, and the first thing he said was, "I didn't come here to take anything. I just wanted to see his family, to know he had one." And something inside me cracked open. Not anger, not yet, just disbelief. I had spent 60 years in a marriage with a man who had another family, another son, a whole other life I knew nothing about. The image I had of Hal, steady, quiet, faithful Hal, shattered right there in that coffee shop, and I realized I had to figure out how to grieve him all over again. A month after that first meeting, Marcus showed me a photograph. It was him at about 10 years old, standing next to a woman I'd never seen. Pretty, dark hair, tired eyes. Behind them, in the background, was a living room, wood paneling, a couch I didn't recognize, a window with yellow curtains, and there was Hal, smiling, not the same smile he gave me, something different, something I'd never seen. This wasn't a one-time mistake. Hal had visited that boy. He'd been in that living room, in that other life, multiple times. He'd known about Marcus, and he'd chosen not to tell me. Year after year after year. I wanted to hate him. Part of me did hate him. But here's the thing about being 84. You've had enough life to know that people are rarely just one thing. Hal's father left when Hal was 12. Did you know that? I knew it, but I didn't think about it much. Hal never talked about his father, not once in 60 years. I'd ask, and he'd change the subject. It was a closed door. But now I wonder, maybe Hal was trying to be better than his own father. His father left completely, disappeared, never looked back. Maybe Hal thought that by visiting Marcus sometimes, by not abandoning him entirely, he was doing something his father never did. He was still wrong. I want to be clear about that. What he did was a betrayal. Every trip he took, every hold down the fort, every time he looked me in the eye and didn't tell me, that was a choice, a selfish choice. But it wasn't cruelty. I don't think it was cruelty. It was cowardice, maybe, fear, the inability to face what he'd done, and let me decide whether I could forgive him. I have to own my part too. 60 years, and I never pushed. I never asked why he seemed distant sometimes. I never questioned the trips that seemed longer than they needed to be. I took what Hal gave me, and didn't ask for more. I don't know if that was trust or if it was just easier not to look too closely. Dennis still won't talk to Marcus. He says he's protecting the family, protecting Hal's memory. But Carol invited Marcus to Thanksgiving last year. She said he's just a person, Mom. He didn't choose this either. She's right. Marcus didn't choose to be born into this. He didn't choose to grow up wondering why his father only visited sometimes. He didn't choose to lose his mother and then go searching for a family that didn't know he existed. I remember something else now. 1988. I found Hal in the garage, crying. He was sitting on an old lawn chair, and when I came in, he wiped his face fast like he was embarrassed. I asked what was wrong. He said nothing, just tired. I let it go. I had dinner to make, kids to manage. I let it go. Now I wonder if Marcus's mother had something to do with it. If something happened that year, a visit, a conversation, a loss, that broke through Hal's walls for just a moment. I'll never know that either. I loved a man for 60 years, and I'm still finding out who he was. If you're married, there are things you don't know about the person next to you. I can almost guarantee it. Things they've never told you, things they carry alone because they don't know how to share them, or because they're afraid of what you'd think. Maybe it's not another child. Maybe it's a debt they've hidden, a friendship they've kept secret, a regret they've never spoken out loud. We all have rooms we don't show anyone, even the people we love most. You can ask, you can push, you can say, I want to know the parts of you that you're hiding, or you can do what I did, accept what they give you, and never look too closely, and find out the truth when it's too late to talk about it. I've met Marcus 3 times now. He's a good man, quiet, like Hal, works as an electrician in Kentucky, has 2 daughters of his own, Hal's granddaughters. My husband had granddaughters I never knew about. Dennis still won't acknowledge him. That's Dennis's choice. And I don't push. But Carol had him over for Thanksgiving. They talked for hours. She said Marcus told her stories about Hal that I'd never heard. Fishing trips, conversations, moments from an entirely different life. I still miss Hal. That's the strange part. I'm angry at him. I pity him. I feel betrayed by him. But I still reach for his side of the bed some mornings. I still buy his coffee. I still talk to him sometimes, in the kitchen when it's quiet. The difference is, now I tell him what I know. I tell him I found out. I tell him I wish he'd trusted me enough to tell me himself. Every morning I set out 2 coffee cups, then I put 1 back, and I sit with the silence. You don't stop loving them when you find out they lied to you. That's not how 60 years works. But you do start loving them differently. You start loving them more honestly. Not the person you imagined. The person they actually were. Flawed. Afraid. Human. If this found you, if you're sitting next to someone right now with questions you've never asked, ask them. Today. Don't wait until someone else has to tell their story for you.